Welcome to this episode of Harvey County Talk. As always, I'm your host, Lance Gormley. Our guest on the program today is Mark Jenkins, who is a North Newton City Council member, but also running for Harvey County Commission District 2. How are you doing today, Mark?
Doing good. It was a great morning. Real nice outside. I appreciate your invitation.
Oh, absolutely. I try to get as many people as I can out here on the program who are movers and shakers. I did not know who you were before. Well, I met you at the county when you were filing, and you were, in my opinion, a very nice man, kind man. We talked for a while there, and I thought, I like Mark Jenkins. I do. And, of course, we're on different sides of the aisle or whatever, so we're supposed to be arch enemies, right? Some kind. But anyway, I noticed right away that that's not how you roll, that's not the kind of guy you are. Once I did my thing and I really wanted to also interview somebody from North Newton that was on the city council, and I was like, man, I need to call Mark and have Mark come out and see if he'll come out and talk with me a little bit about who he is, where he came from, and just get to know you more. So,
my pleasure.
In full disclosure, like I said, I don't know Mark real well, so this will be a great opportunity for us just to be able to get to know one another, and for the rest of the community to get to know you as well.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody knows that when I do these Harvey County Talks, that the first thing we try to do is get to know who you are as a person just a little bit more.
Right.
So I just start out with asking, where'd you come from? If you want to tell me where you were born, where you went to school, what you like doing at school. You're a tall guy, so I'm assuming you maybe basketball, anything.
Well, I started out, Lance. I'm lifelong Kansan, but mainly Wichita.
Okay.
And so from the time real young, I've been from Wichita, and then I was married in Wichita, and so in 1986, we'll just kind of start there because that's when my real career started. I hired on to the Wichita Fire Department, and I was going to Wichita State, and I actually just wanted a real good career. Didn't have a lifelong desire to be a fireman hero. I just wanted a good job. So I got on the fire department in Wichita, and I spent 22 years as a Wichita fireman. And about 1993, we moved, me and my wife and my son, we moved out to Gossel area. Everybody sometimes gets that idea is, hey, I'd like to have a house with a little bit of land and, be out on my own in the country. And so we found a place up there and we bought it. And, and then our son actually, he started first grade in Gossel. And, we loved the school, loved the community. So we stayed there for 13 years, and he went all the way through, 12 years, 13 years. We stayed out there at Gossel. And then, we thought, well, when our son leaves and stuff, we're not getting any younger, and we don't really have all this, we had some land to take care of, and we're like, this is going to get harder as we get older. So then, coming through North Newton all the time to shop in Newton, we were like, hey, we kind of like North Newton. And one day, we were driving through and there was a house for sale in North Newton. And so we said, let's make the move. So we sold our place in the country, and kind of 50-50 on, I really sometimes wish I was still out there because there's a lot of freedoms and a lot of things you can do. But I also like being in North Newton because was not enough or not as much maintenance and stuff. So then in 2008, I retired from the Wichita Fire Department, and the city of Newton hired me to be a building inspector. One of my jobs in the fire department was I was a fire inspector, so I'd go around and inspect buildings for, fire code. And one thing I was always pretty good at, if I want to pat my back, I was reading code books, and that's all you're really doing in fire department and in building. I wasn't never a builder or anything like that, but I was really good at reading code books. So Suzanne Loomis, as you know, she took a chance on me and said, hey, I think you can work here. And so I did that for 11 years, and I was like 2 or 3 years as a building inspector, and then the building and zoning administrator retired, and so she just put me into that position. So for like 8 or 9 years, I was building and zoning administrator, and then so anyway, then I decided to retire from the city of Newton, and then my wife, she works at Avcon Industries, which is a a modification company at the Newton Airport. Modify airplanes, put camera systems on them, just all that stuff that they wouldn't have me do. But
yeah, love it.
Don't want me near any of that.
Planes are not your thing.
Yeah. But anyway, they said, my wife came home on a Friday and she said, hey, they're wanting to hire someone part-time to drive parts to Wichita and back because all the parts have to be either heat treated or chemically treated. And so they said they wanted somebody to work like 12 to 4. And I thought, that I'm getting at the age that I'm like, that sounds like a pretty good retirement gig.
Yeah.
So I just jumped and said, I'm going to take that. And so I did that now. So that's what I'm doing currently. Now, as far as on the political, if you want to call it political scene, I was asked one time by one of my neighbors if I'd run for city council in North Newton. And I said, sure, why not? So I went around and have an interesting story about that kind of gets to where, you and me have talked before the interview about the political climate. So the first time I'm running, I so crude, I just printed off a deal on paper that kind of gave my resume. And I'm walking around, and so, and this is North Newton. I mean, everybody, if they don't know, North Newton's supposed to be a really friendly neighborhood, and it is, and, everybody's supposed to get along and stuff like that, and for the most part they do. And so I'm walking around, and so this garage door was open, and there was an elderly gentleman in there, and me being at the time was like 62, so if I'm talking elderly, he was older than me.
Yeah.
He was probably close to 80. And so I walked in there and I said, hey, I'm Mark Jenkins, running for city council from North Newton. And he goes, are you Democrat or Republican? And I said, well, this is a nonpartisan city election, but I identify as a Democrat. And his next word was goodbye.
Yeah.
And I looked at him, I'm like, what? And he said, goodbye, you can leave now. And I thought, so this is where we've come.
Yeah.
We've come to the point that I'm trying to help your community where you live, and you're going to tell me to leave.
Yeah, without ever even, it's like, man, I had so many questions going now. Okay, so I did not know that you were a firefighter.
Right.
And so as a, and you how you did 20 years, so you retired and everything. What, you made the comment that you didn't necessarily, wanted to be a hero firefighter your whole life, but that's what you wound up doing, Mark.
Well,
I mean, what? I guess my question is, what was the biggest takeaway? What was because that's a large portion of your life, and so I know that first responders are heroes. You are in my book. Absolutely. I think firefighters, police are the backbone of our society. And without people like you that are willing to serve in that way, so you're the first firefighter I've had on the program too. Well, that's awesome. Like give me a takeaway of that. I mean,
well, in my opinion, firefighters and for all first responders, we get paid to do heroic acts. You can call me a hero if you want, but I was getting paid to do that. So, and that doesn't lessen what I was doing, but it was a job, and it was an important job, and it still is. And those people put their lives on the line every day. As you know, we lost a guy in Wichita here a few months ago, and he went to work that morning. He actually is from Newton. Both, and didn't go home.
Yeah.
And you never went to work every morning thinking you weren't going to go home the next day, but that's what happened to him.
Yeah. Well, if you did that, I mean, it might affect your job too.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know, if you were somebody that was constantly worried about losing your life and not realizing that that's something that's part of the job, then you're probably in the wrong field.
Right. And, you know, so, yeah, I think it's a real important career, and it was, you know, a great career for me. It really helped me out quite a bit and still is helping me out. But, you know, it's just a good government job. It's just a good duty job, and I enjoyed all of it. But, you know, there comes a time when you get to, you know, I was almost 50, and I was you know, I didn't advance. Well, I did advance. I went into building inspections for a while, but then I went back out onto the floor, is what they call it. So I was like 49 years old, and I was still riding a fire truck. Yeah. And, you know, it's just, it's a young man's game. So, you know, I needed to look for something after being a fireman. And that's when the city of Newton came in. I just happened to see this job for building inspector, and I thought, well, you know, I've got a lot of inspection experience. And then, you know, went and talked to Suzanne, and she gave me a continuation of being a public servant. You know, I've been a public servant now for, if you count my time on the city council, I've been a public servant for about 36 years. Wow. And so, you know, it's just what I've done.
Okay, so many people question, you know, just in general, like we were talking, why would you sign up to be a city council member, or why would you choose to do this? I mean, there's like, I mean, I'm gonna say it's nothing against firefighting or what we pay firefighters or anything like that, but you know, there's other fields where you could make a lot more money with a lot less risk. Right. So what, and then, you know, that many years of public service, why choose to serve the public in those capacities, Mark? Why did you make the decision that you wanted to be somebody who just served in not only one capacity, but multiple capacities?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a cliche of always wanting to help people, but I've always kind of been like that. You know, I've always wanted to help and wanted to help people, but, you know, you also need to make a living, and those jobs provided both. I mean, being on the fire department, you're always helping people, but you're also getting paid. And then when I went to the city of Newton, you know, I loved helping people. I loved helping people with their projects. You know, I had a guy, he's a businessman in Newton, and me and him could not be any more politically opposed. 180 degrees. But when he found out I was running for county commission, he called me, and his quote to me was, "The reason I liked working with you, Mark, is you always wanted to help me get my project done." He said, "You never just came out and said no. You always wanted to look for a way to help me." And I said, "Well, that's what I thought I was supposed to do." If you tell everybody no, then what are you going to get to?
And ultimately, the goal is to keep people safe. Right. I mean,
build your building. Build your building the right way, do the right things, and you're keeping people safe. But you got to remember, that guy's trying to make a living, and the way he's making a living is developing his business. So if you can help him but keep everybody safe, then you've done what you're supposed to do. So
you're just, I'm telling you, I'm firing on all cylinders right now, because I want to ask you 1,000 questions, but just for the interview, I know I'm not going to be able to, but there's so many things I want to ask about your career and the ups and downs and things like, well, what's the, the best takeaway, or what's the most troubling experience that you might have had, or the biggest challenge. But you hit me near and dear to my heart, which when you mentioned that we'll just call him the unnamed gentleman, that when you went to their doorstep and you knocked on their door and you were just looking to serve in that capacity, the first thing they did was just determine everything about you based upon a word.
Just exactly.
And not only a word, but what they conceived as that definition of that word. Right. So it's like he didn't know you were a firefighter for 20-some years. He didn't know that you worked for the city of Newton, serving people and making sure that like you had mentioned, they're able to do business and everyone remains safe, and they didn't know about your kids and what your life and stuff. You just in that moment became a label. And not only a label, but whatever definition of that word that person, or I'll just personalize it, you're the label that I define that label as.
Right. Yeah, no one ever asked me when I was going into their house that was on fire if I was a Democrat or Republican. Nobody asked me when I found 2 kids in a house fire that ultimately died, but I was the one that found them. No one asked me if I was a Democrat or Republican when I pulled them out.
Yeah.
Nobody asked me when I've done CPR on hundreds of people if I was a Democrat or Republican.
Yeah.
No one asked me.
Well, and even more. Now I'll just go here. Even more, and this is the key to me, because you put it in one facet, but I'll put it in another. You never once asked whether those people were Republicans or Democrats.
Exactly.
You didn't say, "Oh, well, let me check your voter registration before I make the decision about whether you're worth saving or not."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's an incredible way to perceive and that's some real world perspective there.
Right. So then I lost that election.
Okay.
And I don't know if you really say I lose it. The way it works in most city councils or commissions is, say there's 3 positions open, they take the top 3 vote getters.
Yeah.
So I think in Newton that year there were 2 positions open, and I got 3rd in a 3-person race.
Okay.
I think that's how it was, but I don't remember. So anyway, I was kind of like, okay, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
So then 2 years later, there was another position open, and I was asked again, hey, are you interested in running for that? And I'm like, sure, why not? Yeah. So I went ahead and put in on that one, and I was like second in the 3-man race. So I got elected by, I think it was 13 votes.
Okay. Well, that's probably a pretty high margin of percentage in North Newton, right?
Probably 10%. But anyway, so then I got on there and I've been on there for 3 years. And again, everybody, well, if they don't know, that's fine. But I mean, North Newton's still a pretty liberal community. Yeah. But no one asks if we're liberal or conservative when we figure the budget out. Yeah. I've been through 3 budgets now. We just finalized our 3rd one. We just pay our bills.
Yeah.
And we try to make life in North Newton good for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and okay with this, since we are talking politics here, I find it interesting that, you mentioned that North Newton seems to be or slide more liberal, but isn't that dependent, and I just want to pick your brain here, but sometimes isn't that dependent upon how conservative someone might identify themselves as? And in what, it's like, I guess I say this, that's a label again. Okay, North Newton's a little more liberal. That's no news to anybody.
Yeah, that's no secret.
But in comparison to what? And see, that's where we get into this political talk about somebody that would be so willing to just cast you aside based upon. I mean, it's in my opinion, and I've been there. It's rather dehumanizing because. They don't want to hear your ideas. They don't want to hear where you come from. They don't want to hear about your past. They don't want to humanize you in any way, shape, or form. They just want to say, oh, you are not me. You're not, you don't think. But see, even then, when we get into like liberals or conservatives, something that I've studied a lot is, well, what is that definition? Yeah, right, because when you put a definition on a liberal, if you gave, and I know I don't want this to be about me and my thoughts, but if you gave 100 people a piece of paper and had liberal and conservative, just 2 words, and then you said, write your definition of what a liberal is and write your definition of what a conservative is, you would be amazed at the amount of people which it's not the same.
And I might be, it would take me a long time to answer those 2 questions because I don't know. I don't know why we define people as one side or the other. But I do know this, that one of the people that works in the House of Representatives, and I won't mention the name because I don't want to misquote or anything, but they said one time that in the Kansas House and Senate, 70 to 80% of the time, stuff passes bipartisanly.
Yeah.
He said, there are fringes.
Yeah.
So what that tells me is that most of the people are in that center lane.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how stuff gets done, is in the center lane.
And I agree.
If everything's in the right lane or in the left lane, we're not going to get a lot of stuff done.
Yeah.
And again, as I've talked to you before in the interview and stuff, local government, in my opinion, has to be nonpartisan, very nonpartisan, because everybody wants good drinking water, has to have it. You can't live without water. That's the only thing that your government provides you that you cannot live without. You have to have drinking water. You have to have police service, emergency services. You have to have good roads to drive on. You have to have schools. You have to have recreation centers. You have to have parks. All of those things you have to have. And those are not Republican or Democrat, conservative, liberal. Those are just the facts.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if you're always going to judge things like roads or water plants or police departments or whatever, if you're always going to judge things on a partisan skew, you're going to have problems running a community.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that at all. It's funny how much we are in agreement upon some of these things. I've long believed that one of the things that are very problematic in my experience has been that people, well, I'm just going to say it like this. Over all this time, what I've come to understand is that many people do not want to elect somebody that will do what's good for everyone. They want to elect somebody that will do
That's a very good point.
What they want and project government onto them. So it's almost like I believe where we're at in the state of affairs is that, well, I want for my government to represent me as a conservative Republican. Right. And then somebody else wants, their elected official to represent them as a liberal Democrat, right? But the reality is when we talk about local government, as you said, I concur. The mass majority of decisions that are made at the North Newton City Council meeting, the Newton City Commission, the school board, and even the county commission are all decisions that really don't reflect a political party.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Right. A city administrator for Newton told me one time, and again, I won't quote because I can't remember the whole quote, but what he said one time is the thing you have to remember about local government is you're governing to everybody. Yeah. So you're governing to everyone. And I have seen on city commissions and stuff where commissioners, they're not current, had tried to govern to individuals. So someone would come in and they would have a problem with a certain ordinance or something like that. And bless that commissioner's heart, they wanted to try to govern to that individual. So they wanted to make it right for that individual. But what you always have to remember is you're governing to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Even people that maybe don't agree with you.
Right.
You know, that's why, you know, I when I first met you and I was like, is that Mark? Man, he's a tall guy. So people can't tell, or maybe I'm a short guy. I don't know. I'm advertised. You know?
I think you are.
You're definitely a tall man. But you know, you were having a question, and
you helped me.
Yeah, and I was like, no. You know, and then I
could have turned and walked the other way and said, heck with it.
That Democrat.
Yeah, exactly.
Here, I'll steer him wrong, you know.
Right, you could have said, good luck. And, you know, I had like 72 hours to get this in.
Yeah.
And
potentially helped you file to run against me.
Exactly. And that, you know, Lance, that's exactly what I thought when I left that building.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That's exactly what I thought. I thought, okay, here's this guy. He doesn't owe me anything.
Yeah.
And in the long run, we could be not adversaries, but we could be running for the same position.
Good. Yeah.
He couldn't, you know, he didn't have to do that. He could have just said, good luck.
Yeah.
He didn't have, you know, and I thought, well, you know, that's pretty good of that guy to, you know, give me a handshake and say, hey, here's what you need to do. I forget what it was, but the state will contact you.
Yep.
It'll all be okay. Just, you know, because like I say, I'm fighting the clock here.
Yeah.
And, you know, it'll all be okay. You get your paperwork in, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it was a very big help.
Yeah, well, and I know that burden. I remember in context, so we don't want to divulge what it was about. But yeah, just that, and I only know this because I've done this like 5 times. You know
you by their first name.
But yeah, you know, truth be told is that's how I operate.
Yeah.
You know, I don't. I'm somebody that's a firm believer that. You know, we don't have adversaries.
Yeah.
We don't have challengers. I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail, but with rhetoric that some choose, just shows me that if someone's using that type of rhetoric when they're running for office, that only shows what kind of a legislator or an official they'll be.
Yeah.
You know, if we're both running to do what we believe to be the best job for our community.
Right.
And we think that, you know, we're qualified to do that. And we want to step up to serve in that way,
right.
Which I'm truly a believer that you're about, what you're doing. I mean, as I'm learning who you are through this interview, there is no good that can come of me and you being against or at odds or adversaries
right.
or challengers
right.
or, you know, and then to treat one another that way, that kind of defeats the purpose to serving, I would say. Agreed? Or, I mean,
right,
you know.
exactly. If I get elected, there could come a time when I have to do something that either helps you or it hinders you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that would be doing my job.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have anything personally against you, and I wouldn't have anything for you. It's just doing what's right for, again, you're governing to the masses. Now, it may be an issue that you don't like, but that you have personalized that to yourself.
Yes.
And we all do that. I mean, if you get a speeding ticket, you think, gosh, you know, that guy really...
He was after me.
He really hampered me. But what you got to realize is that police officer, highway patrolman, sheriff's officer, whoever, is trying to protect the masses.
Yeah. And always forget that I was the one speeding. That's why I got the ticket.
What?
Self-accountability goes a long way, you know.
Yeah.
But if you were thinking about that to begin with, probably wouldn't have got a ticket. Right? So, okay. So you chose to not only do it once and lose at the new, I mean, you know, if you want to
right.
call it that, losing.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
I don't look at it that way. I look at it as no matter what, It gives you the opportunity to speak about issues in the community.
Right.
It gives people I mean, you get the conversation with people going, and you
Right.
give them an option, right? You didn't get no votes, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah,
you had people that truly
Right.
believed that you were the man for the job. You just didn't get enough that time, so you ran again, and you were successful. I guess just starting with that, since being elected to North Newton City Council, what was probably, in your opinion, the biggest challenge for you to overcome once elected to that? I mean, was it what you thought it was going to be? I mean, you kind of have an understanding given your career and
Right.
history, because obviously city councils and county commissions kind of
Controlled me.
yeah, I mean, so you understand all about it, policy, how policy affects you, how policy affects everybody else, how it affects the community, and that these decisions matter. They really do matter. Some good in your opinion, probably, and some not so good.
Yeah.
But what stood out to you the most about just the biggest challenge maybe that you had personally from being outside of that role and then being in that role?
Yeah. Well, one thing is you get an understanding of one thing is how important city employees are and how important it is to keeping them. Because as you know, you hire somebody, and about the time you get them trained and about the time you get them to where they know what they're doing, if they quit and go somewhere else, you got to do it all again. Yeah. So in my opinion, it's I've always been a really big advocate for employees, and I won't ever go back on that. I always vote for a good pay raise for them. I want them to have the best benefits, because if they leave, I want it to be for some other reason. Yeah. I don't want them to say, I'm going to Heston because I can get more money. I'm going to Hillsboro because I can get more benefits. I want them to leave because, hey, we're moving to Kansas City. Yeah. We're moving to Dallas, but I want them to be here because why should I go anywhere else? I'm being taken care of pay-wise, I've been taken care of benefit-wise and stuff like that. So I've always been a real advocate for that. Now, I was never involved in any budget issues in any of my jobs. I saw how the budgets affected us, either on the fire department or the city building and zoning, but I was never involved in making any decisions about budgeting. So that was a learning curve for me. It was like, okay, what's a mill levy? How does a mill levy work? How does a what's it called, revenue neutral
rate? Yeah, the whole thing.
How does all that work?
So that's just new.
Yeah. And so that was a big learning curve, is how do we do that? How do we keep revenue neutral, or do we raise the mill levy, lower the mill levy? But it all comes down to the same thing, as paying the bills to keep the city lights on, or in my county lights now. If I get the county lights on, and and also make it so people want to live here and they can afford to live here.
Now, it's interesting that you point out what you just did, because I will defer that to culture when you talk about the city of North Newton and your desire to make sure that individuals who are there feel taken care of, know they're taken care of, do get adequate pay raises, don't want to leave. I mean, honestly, because the culture is good. They're getting adequately paid. They're feeling like they are in a good spot. Like the service that they provide is appreciated. And I'll tell you, North Newton's culture is good. I mean, and I'm sure that's probably something where you picked, the baton and are carrying it on. So I doubt you'll probably take credit for all of it. Like Mark showed up and 3 years later, we changed this culture around, because cultures don't change like that. But it is interesting how cancerous a negative culture is to an organization such as a county or a city municipality, but yet a positive culture goes a long way.
Right. And I think, again, going back to It's governing to everybody. Because like I say, you know, we have all different opinions and in North Newton that anywhere has. You know, we have people that are conservative and we have people that are liberal.
Yeah.
But the deal is they still, when they turn the water faucet on, they still want water.
Yeah. Yeah. Or when they flush that toilet, it's good that it's got somewhere to go.
Exactly.
You know, basic things.
Yeah, basic. And that's what you're doing. And, you know, as we talked earlier, you know, if you have to keep the national rhetoric at bay.
Yeah.
Because again, as we talked, 90 to 95% of your daily life is controlled by your city or county governments.
Yeah.
You know, it may be fun to talk about the national races and stuff like that, or sometimes it's not fun to talk about them. Yeah. But the bottom line is me and whoever else is on the county commission are going to be the ones to decide what kind of parks you have to go to, all the way to what kind of sheriff's officers you have to come to your house.
Yeah.
Period.
Okay, so come in full swing, and I know in my experience, I've never just said, "Hey, I'm going to run for an office."
Yeah.
Usually, I mean, well, in all cases, it's come down to, "Hey, you know, would you be willing to serve in X capacity?"
Right.
You know, and so then you probably kick it around a little bit and think about whether you're qualified to be able to do this job or not. But the county commission, okay, it came up. We've talked a little bit in the, you know, during this interview, and then of course not during this interview, about the county commission being a partisan position, and how you know, the city commissions or school boards are nonpartisan races, and you know, we discussed how we felt about that, and surprisingly come to the a pretty close conclusion of the negatives that are associated with making local decisions, and then it allowing for people to weigh in a partisan way that's not necessarily as relevant as what some might want it to be. But when you were asked to run for county commission, why did you do it?
Everyone, since it is partisan, everyone should feel like they have a choice. Now, again, since it's partisan, if there's no one running as a Democrat, and I'll just be honest with you, there wasn't going to be anyone run as a Democrat except me.
Yeah.
Because we were down, as you knew, as I've told you, we were down to the last weekend before you had to have your paperwork in, and there wasn't any Democrats lining up at the front door of the county commission to go in and file their paperwork.
Yeah.
So I was asked if I would be willing to run, and I said, my first answer, and I'll be honest, it doesn't matter, I said, younger people need to start stepping up and running this city, county, state, country. Younger people need to step up. Well, as I was told, you know, we agree with you, Mark, but there's no one that's going to do that on this election. And so I decided that it breeds apathy if people, because it is still a partisan world, it breeds apathy if I go in as a Democrat and there's no one to vote for. Because some people do just vote party line. And if there's no one on that side of the ledger, why do I go? And so that's why I put in for it. It's like, okay, I want to give people a choice, and I want to give them a good choice. And I thought, you know, I've been in public service pretty well all my adult careers. I've seen it on all three sides. I've seen it as an employee. I've seen it as a manager, because I did manage people at the city of Newton, and I've seen it as an elected official. So I'm like, yeah, you know, I've got experience on all three levels. So that's why I put in, is I thought, well, I would be a good choice based on my experience.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, Did you have any reservations? I mean, I know that we, once again, going back to this, I'll call it a rah Republican or a da Democrat, okay? And because it is this partisan race where the city council isn't, did you have reservations when it came to taking you full swing back to the very first time that you ran? I mean, you mentioned that. So I mean, that had to have left an impression where somebody says, oh, well, are you a Republican? Oh, okay, well, I'm not voting for you because you're not a Republican. And we talk about, the straight party line. Was there any reservations for you when it came to knowing that you were going to have to navigate through what, generally speaking, is a cesspool of partisan politics? Because you and I both, right? Yeah. I mean, there's got to be an agreement on that.
Well, here's the thing, and you know this as well as I do. It's no secret. If everyone goes into that voting booth or machine and votes party line, I don't have a chance. Yeah. Because what's the split?
Yeah.
Is it 60-40 or 70-30?
Yeah.
It's really high.
Yeah.
So I don't have a chance.
Yeah.
So I could have gone in and just thrown my name in the hat, went home, mowed the lawn, said, had a defeatist attitude basically.
Yeah.
And said, I'm done. You guys vote for me if you want. And then on November 6th, get up and say, well, hey, guess what, Mark? You lost. Well, I expected to lose. If everybody votes party line, I don't have a chance.
Yeah, well,
unless a whole bunch of Republicans don't show up.
Yeah.
And with this being a national election, I feel there probably will be a large turnout. So what I have to do, and with your help, and I appreciate that, what I have to do is show people, first of all, it shouldn't be partisan, and second of all, that I have the wherewithal to do the job because I've been in all three aspects of the job.
Yeah.
And like I've told you, and I've told other people, if I didn't have Republican friends, I'd be a real lonely man.
Yeah.
Because, everybody, I'm not going to say everybody, but the majority of people, just because of the numbers, the majority of people I know are Republicans.
Yeah.
And they don't care if I'm a Democrat, and I don't care if they're a Republican.
Yeah.
We're still friends. I just got done having coffee with 3 Republicans. No one said anything about it. Yeah. We just had coffee and talked about sports or whatever.
You mean there's life after politics? I mean, people can get along, is what you're saying, that have different ideas about things. Yeah. Interesting. I will say this because I do study politics. I think what you're forgetting is there's a large unaffiliated group within our community.
Okay.
There are, no, there's not as many unaffiliated as there are Republicans. No, there's not as many Democrats as there are Republicans. But when you combine the two together, it seems to be much closer.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, most unaffiliated voters get sick and tired of the partisan politics. Like they want options. They're not going to go in and just vote for a Republican because they're the only one on the ballot. Mm-hmm. They like to be influential when it comes to elections, and the only way that can happen is if there are two choices.
Right.
So when we talk about this relationship that you're able to have with people that don't think like you, mm-hmm. I will tell you as a Republican, it is very difficult, even in some instances, to have relationships with other Republicans mm-hmm. based upon their own view, going back to the definition of what a Republican actually is. Since you've been elected, have you experienced situations where people have come to understand who you are, and in your official capacity, not just in friendships with people, but in your official capacity, come to understand that you are somebody that is a level-headed, a non-extremist, somebody that really just wants to do what's best for the whole community, partisan politics aside?
Yeah, I don't know if I've had anybody come up and actually say that, but I will let you know that when I ran for city council the second time, one of the deals on my palm card or whatever was, and I think it still is for this, is, making decisions, the old cliche of quality of life issues. And I have voted no a couple times on the city council of North Newton because I didn't agree. I can't remember exactly what they were because, the years ago now, but looking at stuff and not just voting yes on everything.
Yeah.
And that's, a lot of people, just vote yes just to, keep things moving.
Go along to get along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I've voted no on stuff and some of them, they still went the other way, but that's fine too. I have to vote what I think that, I represent. And so, I haven't really had a lot of conversations with people that, but I think most people are pretty happy in North Newton with the way I've represented them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would just say from getting to know you, I would find it hard to believe that's not true, because like I said, I hate to just beat this drum to say that we come from different sides of the aisle, but I have never felt that you didn't like me or that you didn't, that what I had to say didn't matter, or that if I, when you are a county commissioner, that if I came to you and said, hey, this is, I don't know about this, or please have a conversation with me about that, you wouldn't. You would. You really would, you're out here right now. Yeah. I'm sure that somebody said, oh man, he, why would you go out on that? He's a Republican, but you get what I'm saying. But going back to this is, okay, more focused in on county commission, right? And I'm going to ask some general questions to allow you to be able to speak to your mind to everybody listening and whatnot. But what do you think is one of the biggest challenges, in your opinion, that is facing Harvey County Commission now, or potentially what you see as a challenge for our future?
From what I've been, so lately I've been more studying the county commission meetings. I haven't gone to them because I'm, usually doing something else and I can't just go. But, I read what's in the paper and stuff like that. And I think it's the same with most places, is the cost of running a county. Yeah. And, the revenue streams that we need to, unless somebody's got a better idea, taxes is how we're going to run the county.
Yeah.
And the way you do taxes is, you have property taxes, you have sales tax, you have gasoline tax and stuff like that. And so your taxes are what pays for things. So you need revenue streams to get more tax money. And, so you need businesses to come to your community so that, they will generate more taxes. They'll hopefully get more people to live here, which will, make more houses, which will give you more property tax. So that's one thing. Another thing is grants. From what I understand, and I won't call anyone out because I'm not that kind of person, but what I understand, that grants are a real issue. The reasoning behind applying for certain grants or not applying for certain grants. And I can tell you in, North Newton, we had, he's since moved on, unfortunately, but we had a city administrator, our latest city administrator, that he was there 3 years, and I don't know how many grants he got, but he got a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And that's your money is just coming from a different revenue stream. So if you're getting a federal grant, that's still your money. You paid in those taxes, and now the federal government wants to give it back to you to do a project. There's state grants that's your money, that's your tax money, and the way you get that back into your community is you apply for these grants. I mean, we've got sidewalk grants, we got grants for shade structures for our parks. We got grants for radios for our police departments. The city of Newton just got a $500,000 grant for a fire truck.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where it came from, but guess what? We're getting a new fire truck in Newton.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, ultimately, it is what you said is hitting the nail on the head. I mean, it's one way or another. It is our tax dollars that are contributing to that. Maybe a smaller percentage, maybe by the millionth, right? But when it comes back, that's less of our tax dollars that we have to spend
on a local level.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like take a $500,000 grant that you got for a fire truck.
Yeah.
Instead of getting that grant, that then has to go on to the taxpayer dime. That's a tremendous amount of money for the city of Newton.
Right,
to
and
have
I've
to pay
seen those
for.
turned down. And in the city, when I was in the city of Wichita Fire Department, they had a chance to get a $500,000 grant to buy a new crash truck at the airport, and all the city had to do was, and I heard this from a fireman at the airport. So I'm speaking second information here. So if somebody went and Googled it, and said, "Oh, Mark Jenkins is wrong,"
Depends on who wrote the article too, and how they wrote it.
I talked exactly to a fireman at the fire department at the airport, and he told me they had a chance to get basically the same deal as the city of Newton did. They had a chance to get a $500,000 to buy a $550,000 crash truck, and all the city of Wichita had to do was put up the $50,000, and the city of Wichita didn't do it. Again, I'm talking second information, but that's what the guy told me.
And that's usually how grants work. So I mean, maybe those dollars and cents aren't exactly but that's how a grant works. Normally a grant comes to you based upon your put into the it goes back to this. You're hitting the nail on the head, because the county just had budget meetings, and one of the things that a lot of different departments had expressed was that a lot of different entities, we'll just say that, like Health Ministries Clinic and these other entities, if the county contributes, that gives them the ability to levy that contribution 1,000 times in other ways.
Right.
So having buy-in from your entity, such as what you said, where, well, if you put X amount of dollars up, then you'll be qualified to potentially get a grant for X amount of dollars, which usually is disproportionately, just usually it's, you put up a few dollars and you get a few thousand, right? Type of a conversion. Speaking of Harvey County and asking, what some of the challenges that you see, going positive, like what are some of the things that you think Harvey County really has going for them?
Well, I think location is one thing, being as close as we are to the city of Wichita, for one thing. It makes it attractive to live here. I really don't think people in Wichita realize how close the city of Newton is to Wichita. I mean, that when I used to work at the city of Wichita, I could be there at the city building in Wichita in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
From North Newton.
Yeah.
You jump on 135, you go down to Central, you're there. Since I left the city of Newton, and maybe this says something about me there, they've done a lot of, they've got the shingle plant that's coming. I mean, look at the housing that's being built. All these things that when I was there at the city, we were really going for. We were really saying, hey, this is what we need. We need more housing so that we can fill, these factories that we're going to have with local people. Yeah. And now we're starting to do that. I mean, the old Fox Ridge Golf Course. There's several, and I would like to see that going on. There's several places that are in the middle of Newton that are crop fields.
Yeah.
They're growing corn.
Yeah.
Well, let's see, can we get with a developer and say, hey, we have this cornfield at 12th Street and right there by the interstate.
Yeah.
Can we do something to get houses in there instead of corn?
Yeah.
Because houses bring people and houses bring more taxes in. Our location with being next to Highway 50 and being on I-135 corridor, we finally got the shingle plant to come. And one of the big reasons was probably our location next to the highway. Well, if we can tell other companies you have these, areas that you can put your business here and you're really close to the highway, so you can get on the highway and go to Dallas, or you can get on the highway and go to Kansas City with your goods. I think that's a really positive deal of Harvey County. I would like to see more, I would like to see a new school south of Highway 50, because that, as you know, that's the way that we're growing.
Yeah.
And, the kids have to be either taken by bus or taken by parents over to South Breeze.
Yeah.
There's no way to really get there. I mean, they can walk, but they have to walk out on Kansas. And so if we could get a school somewhere around 24th and Kansas, what would that do to people looking to move out of Wichita or wherever? And they said, hey, we have a public school right here by your house.
Yeah.
Because we have a new neighborhood going in right next to the fire department, fire station. We've got the golf course, which is only going to expand and stuff like that. But we need a school for those kids to go to.
Yeah. That's interesting. Just speaking of the future, I like that you have that kind of forward thinking. I know that in the past that there was conversation about a school there, and did not go well. For lack of, it just didn't, and maybe the timing was off.
Yeah.
But if we continue, we want to grow.
Right.
We want to continue to expand, and I'll just put maybe under, is it? Everything that you had mentioned, I could put it under the umbrella of economic development.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, economic development is the driver for your community.
Yeah.
It all starts with, and size-wise, Harvey County is one of the smallest counties in Kansas, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And so, we have a very small county, but we have industrial parks. We have areas to develop. So let's work on developing those, and let's give, as a county, let's provide development opportunities. Let's help the city, because the city is going to need certain infrastructure help to get those economic development areas going. So we need to partner with, because most of them are on the outskirts of the city county line.
Yeah.
So, we may have to help the city, and the city may have to help us. As a joint effort to get those areas where we can have more industry coming into them.
Yeah,
because, that's just the way you do grow.
Yeah.
And, you try to pick winners, but you're going to help them out, and that's just part of the deal. You're going to give them tax breaks. But the one thing you can do is, like I told that guy that said I always, helped him out. I said, well, to me, it's a want and need relationship.
Yeah.
When the shingle, and I was not involved with it, I haven't even read, but the shingle company, they wanted certain things.
Yeah.
We want tax abatement. We want utilities, whatever.
Yeah.
They wanted all these things. But what the city did, I'm sure, was they said, okay, we'll give you all these, but we need good paying jobs.
Yeah.
We need a company that we can be proud of. We need a company that's not going to be an environmental disaster. We need these things. So it's a want and need. The companies want these things, but we also need those companies to give us assurance that they're going to provide these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So because we are getting close to our hour mark. But you brought something up, tax abatements, and for some reason I think it's in my opinion it's become a somewhat dirty word, and only because people don't understand tax abatements. And I'll throw this out here because I know you know this. A tax abatement is not saying that an individual doesn't pay taxes, because that business or company is paying the taxes that were already being paid on the undeveloped or the underdeveloped or the state in which they made this agreement. So they are paying taxes. They're just deferring the taxes on the property valuation increase for a period of time.
Right.
So, a way I look at it, and I think is the way that people should look at it, is the fact that you wouldn't get those tax dollars one way or the other.
Right.
So, and I'm not throwing you under a bus here, but I'm under the impression that you probably have a very good understanding about how tax abatement works, given that you are already a council member. But just tell me your thoughts on tax abatements, how that factors into economic development, and then the future of our community with or without those tax abatements.
Yeah. Well, I'm not an expert on tax abatements because I haven't been in the arena yet to decide those things. So I'm, in no way an expert on tax abatements, but I do understand, like you say, the general purpose is that you give a tax abatement to these companies so they can get up and running, and it's an incentive for them to come here. The issue with tax abatements, in my opinion, is you have to do them, because it's kind of like we were talking about those grants. If you don't apply for that grant, someone else is going to. Well, it's the same way with tax abatements. If we don't give them, McPherson County will, or Sedgwick County will. So it's a way of doing business anymore. But what you hope for is that also by giving those tax abatements and getting that company here, you get a lot of, like you say, you're delaying that tax, until a certain time. But what are the other benefits that you're getting? You're getting people a job. You're getting gas stations sales of gas. You're getting restaurant sales of lunch or dinner as someone's going home. And the main thing you want is you want to grab an individual that didn't know that they would like being in Harvey County to be in Harvey County. So like if I'm from Wichita and I get a job at the shingle plant, or like where I work at Avcon, most of the people that work there come from outside of Harvey County. And so what you want is you hope that they think, hey, if I can buy this house in Newton, and we have good schools, we have good parks and stuff like that, then you've got somebody. You've increased your population a little bit. You've given them, they bought a house, so now they're going to start paying taxes. They're going to start going to Dillon's, Walmart all the time and stuff like that. So you're increasing your county wealth by having a new person come into your county.
Very good. Very good. Agreed. So now that we are coming to the end of the program, I got one gotcha. Okay. The gotcha is I always give people that come on the program the ability to speak directly to the hearts and the minds of anybody listening. You can say whatever you want. It doesn't matter, but you got the floor, Mark.
Well, first of all, I'd like to tell you thank you. Thank you for having me. Again, I didn't know you and you didn't know me. Now we kind of know each other. I'd have coffee with you any time of the week, and it'd be great. Second of all, I would just like to tell people the main thing is get out and vote. There's two things you need to do. On November 5th, you need to get out and vote, and you need to get out and vote on November 5th. Those are your two assignments for me, is do one of those. And the second of all is just look at the candidates and do your research, and don't just vote because they're on one side of the aisle or the not. You need to look at what this person, number one, if you want to look at their experience, look at what they've done. And, I've got a public service record. If that's important to you, if you think this person has seen it all, done it all. I haven't seen it all and done it all, but I've been there a while and I've seen how it works. And so if that interests you and you think I'll do you a good job, vote for me. You're going to get what you get. I'm going to go in there and work my tail off to try to make Harvey County the best we can be. And that's about it. But I sure do appreciate your platform here, and look forward to, if I win, look forward to talking to you in the future. And if I don't win, I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Wow. You're awesome, Mark. I appreciate you. I really do. Right. It's amazing how friendships can be born over the simplest of things. And I'm going to say, in most instances, where friendships can't be born, right? Where people just won't let it happen.
Right.
But I appreciate you, and thank you for coming on the program, and thank you for sharing your heart with me. And I'm just blessed that you're here, and that I have another new friend over there.
Yeah. Well, call me anytime if you want to do this closer to the election, or if you want to do it after the election, no matter the outcome. Let's get together.
Okay. You're the man. You're the man. I appreciate you, Mark. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Harvey County Talk. I was your host, Lance Gormley, and our guest on the program was Mark Jenkins, who is a North Newton City Council member and also running for Harvey County Commission District 2. Get out and vote, everybody.